there we see it, the slow unravelling of exactly what happened. That audacious escape of rapist and murderer Thabo Bester is all coming out in the open now. Bester and his partner Dr. Nandipa Magudumana, back in the country behind bars. Last week, G4S, who runs the prison, the Department of Correctional Services, the police and justice ministers, and the Judicial Inspectorate of Prisons grilled before a parliamentary committee. Is this the shake-up that our prisons and the Mangaung Correctional Centre in particular has been needing? Joined now by the Judicial Inspectorate for Correctional Services, retired Judge Edwin Cameron. Judge, thank you so much for joining us. So, last week in Parliament's committee meeting, you pretty much fell on your sword, saying, I should have pushed harder, I knew it was serious, it was hard to believe, but I feel I should have done more. Do you feel that you and the other people I mentioned before this parliamentary committee deserved the grilling that you got?
Certainly, Sally, and what a pleasure to be with you and eNCA's viewers. Sally, I do think so. I think it's easy to say, but I really believe there's insufficient accountability for lapses in our country. And may I say it, the parliamentary committee was functioning superbly. They'd all prepared. There were superb searching questions. None of us escaped lightly. I said, I think I made more concessions than the minister or the national commissioner or G4S made. But I think I added, Sally, and I think it's an important point, which is that you mustn't bring the perfect insight and the perfect vision of hindsight to what happened. I acted within my best lights, in best way I could at the time, and while I made that concession, I'm still uncertain what I should have done more. From an armchair, I think many of your viewers might be able to tell me what I should have done more, but I wasn't in an armchair.
Glenys Breitenbach said you've got so much clout, and you do. You're highly esteemed in this country. But what actual powers do you have as the Judicial Inspectorate? I mean, can you do more than flag things you're really worried about?
It's an excellent question, Sally, and we have to emphasize all the time to families, to inmates, families who are desperately worried. We have 154,000 prisoners in our country, the highest number in Africa, the 12th highest in the world. So we're dealing with a mass of worried people, concerned people, and our prisons aren't in the state they should be. Now, having said that, we at JICS have powers of investigation. We can go into a prison, we can search any document, we can go into any place, talk to anyone, but we have no powers about what happens in that prison. We have no organizational, executive, policy-making, managerial powers of any sort. I cannot tell a single DCS official what to do. I cannot tell G4S, even less can I tell G4S what to do. And I think that's also something to bear in mind.
The point was made, though, that when you actually handed this information over to that very parliamentary committee, you didn't underline it properly. It was not very clear. You didn't sort of shout it from the rooftop saying, look, this guy's faked his own escape. The body in the cell was not his. Thabo Bester, rapist and murderer, is on the loose, guys. This is huge. You were criticised for not sort of pushing that. I want to ask you why you went to Ground Up, an investigative news organisation, to actually make the story happen, rather than sort of shout it out loudly in the Portfolio Committee meeting.
It's also a good question. You know, there are various things that an inspecting judge can do, and Ms. Breitenbach, the DA justice spokesperson, very ably said to me, you've got stature. The point you're making, Sally, you've got stature, you've got a voice, you're a former Constitutional Court Justice. But we had twice before given the parliamentary committee what we thought were explosive information. The first is that against the Constitution, against the statute, against international norms, against the Nelson Mandela International rules, we concluded after in-person visits to the sites that solitary confinement, and sometimes protracted solitary confinement, which is a form of torture, is being practiced at Ebongweni and at Pretoria CMAX, just 55 kilometers from where I'm sitting now. What happened to that? I don't know. I then wrote an op-ed in Ground Up, which was taken up by other media who freely use Ground Up's publications. Secondly, your viewers will know that there was a terrible storm about the Phoenix accused who were taken into Durban Westfield Prison. We did a thorough investigation there, led by our Northern Management Region head, Mr. Mirasit Mentor. And when we weren't getting satisfaction from the department, we sent our report, even before we'd had the DCS report, the department's report, which is our usual way of proceeding. We sent it to the parliamentary committee, and again, nothing happened. We weren't called to a meeting, we weren't called to a grilling, we weren't called to an investigation. The committee didn't release it. Now, I wasn't going to quibble with the committee last week. I said to them, yes, I could have come to the committee, and I left it at that. That was true. But it was also true that I thought that Ground Up would be a salient point of eliciting public attention on the astonishing things that we by then started to conclude had happened.
Yeah, and it turns out you were completely right, because it has dominated the news cycle for 3 weeks now. What does this mean, though, in terms of the rest of our prison service? I mean, G4S runs Mangaung Private Correctional Centre. My understanding is there's only one other privately run prison in South Africa. You'll know better than me. Are conditions worse at the privately run prisons compared to the state-run prisons? I mean, you know, you make the point of things you've tried to highlight before. Are the privately run prisons worse?
Much, much better in terms of infrastructure, in terms of facilities, in terms of guarding, in terms of electronic surveillance and electronic gates and access, much better. But of course, the point was made last week that these are the physical infrastructures. Beneath it at Mangaung, there was what Mr. Jainchi, the Deputy Chair of the Justice and Portfolio Committee, called Rottenness. And I agreed with that. I agreed with that last week, and I agree with it to you now and to your viewers, Sally. Rotten. The breakdown of elementary operational and organizational and controls and executive oversight at G4S's Mangaung Max was unbelievable. It was shameful. It was a degradation of all types of control, because what happened couldn't have just happened with the 2 or 3 people who G4S thought they could get away by dismissing. It must have involved the whole night shift, either blackmailed or terrified into silence or bought off. And it must have gone much further than that, outside the prison and inside G4S. We don't know how high yet. We hope that whistleblowers will come out and tell us how high it went. So the rottenness is there, Sally. I accept from that Tama Sentamule, which is outside Makadu, the previous Louis Trichardt. I've been there. It looks well run, but now that we know what happened at Mangaung, I'm not hedging. I'm hedging all my bets. I'm not making any firm statements on what might be happening there.
Yeah. So, you know, and the reality is prison escapes do happen. Ananas Mate, he escaped from CMAX in Pretoria. That's government run. But I want to ask you a broader question, because what came through so much last week from you and your team is just when you describe the relationship as spiky, and I saw these small smiles from your team. Clearly it's tough, because you're the people who have to point fingers of blame. But do you think that this national embarrassment for all to see is the shake-up that is needed? Do you think things are going to change? Or do you think that we're going to be sitting here in another few years with another audacious escape?
I think it was a jolt to everyone, Sally, and I hope it will do that. It is a tough job. We're a watchdog. We don't have operational powers, as I emphasized a few minutes ago, but we have a voice. I have a voice. I have the voice right here on your platform this evening. So we hope it will. And may I say, Sally, that the conditions at Mangaung Max, there's no overcrowding. It's one of the few facilities of the 240 prisons we have. Just last month, we visited Durban Westville Medium B. I saw one cell which was made for 19 to 31 people, in which there were 81 people crammed. Now, these aren't awaiting trial prisoners where I've seen equivalent cramming, up to 90 people in a similar sized cell. These are sentenced prisoners who have a long-term prospect of staying in those conditions. Those type of lamentable, excruciatingly undignified and unacceptable conditions, they don't exist at Mongrel Max. Now, that shake-up, the minister has, and it's important to say this, the minister has suspended G4S's operational control about G4S over Mongrel. Not a moment too soon, I might say. The minister has said that the contract won't be extended. The question is whether the minister will cancel the contract before it runs out in 2 or 3 years' time. And I can't express a view on whether he should or not. That's a legal question. It's a policy question for him. But that G4S should have done an entirely different job is quite clear. And what they did was absolutely lamentable.
All right. Thank you so much for speaking to us. I really do appreciate it. That, of course, is Judicial Inspectorate for Correctional Services, retired Judge Edwin Cameron. Do stay with us.